Hey there, it's Sam Ewan from Web3 Studios. I am here with Maya Pindeus from Humanizing Autonomy, which is a company that is really bringing a lot of thought into the AI space. So Maya, I would love for you just to tell us who you are, what you do, and what the company does.
Great, thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Humanizing Autonomy is all about helping machines to understand people, right? Human-machine interactions is a massive field, and if we look at machines, everything is a machine, right? And there's software, right? There's AI being implemented, and it's really around how can we help a machine to be intuitive around people. So we're a computer vision company. We focus on behavioral psychology, bringing computer vision to any device, really. My background, I'm an architect, I'm a designer, I'm an engineer. I work in interaction design for a while, and trying to bring this knowledge and this discipline around architecture, complex environments, interaction, engineering, into humanizing autonomy. A really purpose-driven company to help build technology around people.
Just for those who don't know, can you just tell us like a little bit about what computer vision is?
Yeah. Well, computer vision, the way I look at it, is almost like helping machines see and interpret the world. So computer vision obviously takes video, camera input, and what it does and what we do is really to say like, okay, how can we help really make sense of what's happening in an everyday situation, in a video stream? To give you an example, in Humanizing Autonomy, we look at the camera streams in context, essentially. What are people actually doing, interacting around machines? Take, for instance, urban environments, a car, right? Like people looking to enter, like people looking to cross the street is a likely risk, or people in the home. Right. How are people interacting around smart home devices, etc.
Yeah. So it sounds like, one of the areas that you guys are focused on is we have hundreds and thousands of cameras always looking at us every single day, and someone has written some software that looks at that and makes decisions, right?
Yeah.
And so it sounds like what you guys are doing is just making sure that the integrity of those decisions has a kind of ethical underpinning. Is that correct?
So what we look at is to make sure that the user experience is smooth, is intuitive. We really believe that for any technology, you actually need to start with the person, with the human, with the user, right?
Yeah.
So only when you have this need, then start thinking about technology. So really, where we start come in is around how can we make an interaction smooth so that people don't need to change around technology, but technology adapts around people. So it's really around what sort of decision and what sort of action you're making around your users or people around you.
Yeah, because there's a lot of, I think, conversation about how the developers, the programmers, are often will, without even thinking, put bias into their code when they're designing these systems. But I really like what you're saying, which is if you start with the human first and then design around that behavior versus trying to force a different behavior through it, is sort of what you look at and what you guys do.
Exactly.
Is that correct?
Yeah, it's a lot about. We need to acknowledge like the world is complex.
Yeah.
There's so many different scenarios, right? And it's important to reflect that in the software, or at least like how as a company we think about it. It's never one size fits all, right? What is important is to understand things change in context and to make sure to adapt to that or create some sort of adaptability to it.
So you can't have been sort of paying attention to modern culture or anything without understanding that the last bunch of months, people have been obsessed with AI.
Yes.
Right? Whether it's image-based AI, whether it's text-based AI, whether it's people creating videos on the fly, whatever it may be. And so, what are the things that we should be thinking? One, are the opportunities with this software, but also what are the things that people should be worried about, and sort of as they think about how much to let AI into their lives.
I think what I'm super excited about, and yes, you would read it everywhere, right, is almost AI as companionship, AI that actually assists and enhances. So I think that's something super exciting. If you think about what's been happening around the ambient AI, right, like with voice, for instance.
Yes.
I think now text, vision kind of coming into play there, I think is super, super exciting. The challenges always are, again, the usability, right? Thinking about what this need is, what the interface, what the interaction, what the product is we want to build, and then almost like AI second. I mean, everyone's super excited right now, but it's about finding the use case and application. So that's something that I think the public, everyone using it, actually understands pretty quickly when I start playing around with technology. And I think that's something that we really need to start focusing on.
So how do you guys bring humanity to the partners you work with? Like, because I think there's a human layer in what you bring. So tell us about that process a little bit.
Yeah, sure. So on one hand, it's like how technology is built. So, everything is modular, it's interpretable. We have technology where you can understand the decision-making process. It's adaptable, meaning that if a partner is looking to apply our technology, say like a smart appliance, then we can really tune the technology to that, or whether it's on the road, or whether it's an augmented reality headset, etc. So this modularity is bite-sized, but then also that we always very clear we are experts at understanding, interpreting behavior, but it's really about the decision-making or the interface that you enable, and working really closely with the partners to be able to visualize that. Software is invisible, right?
Yeah.
So we really need a way to visualize and make it understandable and relatable.
As you talk about it, it strikes me that it still feels like the UX layer of AI is in an early state, right? If we were comparing it to email, I remember doing email on terminals, and then and now we have Gmail, right? So so it became much more user friendly. But the idea of typing in a prompt to do X, or again looking at a video stream to then decide whether or not a light should change, it all still feels rudimentary. Where do you think we're in the life cycle to where that technology truly just blends into the back and makes our lives function easier?
I think we're in a stage where we're becoming aware of the clunkiness, right? So there's the excitement about it, but then there's all these different products, experiments, and so on. But I do think the UX and UI, it's still clunky, right? There's not a lot of smoothness and so on. It almost felt like there's all this technology, the foundations that had to be built, products are being brought out, really, and now we're starting to think about, okay, if we want to have this adopted by many, many people, and people who actually love that, then the interface, the experience is actually the defining part, right? So I think we're awareness, and actually now there's a lot of effort in starting to make things more, smoother.
This might be a stupid question. You said, and I think again very appropriately, we're starting to become aware of this and how it can be involved in our lives. The people who sort of think about those hypothetical futures, the Terminator, right? How much is there a sense also that AI is becoming aware of us?
There's a lot of debate out there. I think what matters from my perspective is that we always look at AI as something that fills the gaps. Let's put it that way, really. Fills the gaps, enhances everyday life, but it's always something that works alongside complementary. So that's really the angle that we're taking, that I'm taking here.
Right.
And as long as we do that, I do think that AI is a really, really exciting and wonderful thing.
So, I was having a conversation with someone on the show floor earlier today about the AI space, and they made this reference, which I thought was really interesting, which is at what point are we going to start, exploiting and abusing AI in the same way that we do farm animals, right? But it sounds like what you're saying is no, these are toolkits. They're not beings.
No, they're
and we
tools.
need to keep that separate.
I think we absolutely have to, right? We should never forget we build technology to make human life better. That's the whole purpose, right? And so if the need for AI is to have make life more pleasant, make it more sustainable. So I would always look at it as fill in gaps and actually make the use of products better.
So you're not worried, and I'm not, but I think people are. That suddenly we're replacing huge amounts of workforces. This is really about how do we make those workforces maybe more efficient, maybe be able to function on things humans do really well, right? Versus that machines can maybe automate some of that for us, correct?
Absolutely, yeah.
Oh, okay. What do you think we're going to see in the next year? We're at an innovation festival right now. What do you think we're seeing in the next year or 3 years that are ways that AI are going to seamlessly involve our lives and that we should be excited about?
I'm very excited by generative AI, right? Everything that's happening with ChatGPT and generative vision AI, I think that's really, really exciting as a technology. Getting those technologies to actually be user-friendly and to actually find those use cases where they can actually disrupt industries, where they can actually serve, right, and help. I think that's what I'm super excited about. And then really this ambience, right? Getting AI to be around us, really help make every day much more intuitive, right? As we roam through a city, through a home, through a workplace.
Right. I think that the sort of last question I have is about, and I think again, I come from reading the stuff that you guys put out, but the kind of idea of an ethical layer.
Yeah.
You know, I think we've needed that in social platforms. We needed that in our streaming platforms. All these things. You know, is it time, and are there people already working on kind of what's the acceptable way, and then what are the ways that maybe we should avoid in AI?
Well, I think, ethics absolutely critical, right? So an ethical layer, how knowing that any decision that an AI makes is good, is for good, right? I mean, that's the key thing, that there's a certain things. I think there's a lot of collaborations happening across industry. There's a lot of awareness, governments and so on, around the ethical. Like the way we look at it is that in order to understand behavior, interpret people's behavior, you don't need to know anything about person, right? You don't need to track, you don't need to profile, you don't need to do any facial recognition, none of that, right? And communicating that clearly, I think, is really important, because as the public becomes much more aware about these technologies, but also understanding that, yes, there's this question of things that can be done, but in order to do something that is relevant, you actually don't have to do those, right? And I think this is where the ethics come in.
Right.
And also, of course, creating machine learning and AI that is the interpretability, right? Understanding a decision making, not having a black box where you just don't know what has happened, why it has happened. And I think there's just some really good developments there.
I mean, we're seeing a bunch of AI at CES this year. I mean, I feel like there are some differentiators that Humanizing Autonomy has in the space here. So why don't you give us a couple of those as we wrap up?
Absolutely. So first of all, it's really about human-centric artificial intelligence, right? We look at movement, we look at body language, and what we then do is we interpret the meaning. What would a certain intention be? What is someone's behavioral indicator? What is a social interaction of those things? So it's very much behavior psychology and human first. The other thing is the interpretability and ethics that we spoke about, right? Having AI where you can understand the decision making is absolutely critical, and I think a big differentiator. And thirdly, it's really about bringing it to use and helping a lot of people to actually leverage that. So where a very tiny algorithm that can be deployed on any chip, on any camera, any video stream. So it's really the scalability that we add to it as well.
Amazing. This has been fascinating. Thank you so much for visiting us.
Thanks so much.
We'll keep track of what both you and Humanizing Autonomy is doing, and we look forward to speaking again.
Thanks so much.